how do you do? Welcome to my channel. Thank you for sitting with me in the backyard. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for sharing, and mostly thank you for turning on that notification bell. That is how you help my channel to grow. Without further ado, let's head into the matters arising. The Court of Appeal made some major decisions. After some 12 grueling hours, the judgment of the appeal court affirms Tinubu's election. And it's been a long wait for many lovers and supporters of the petitioners, the People's Democratic Party's Atiku Abubakar and Labour Party Peter Obi. And of course, the judgment yesterday, the pronouncement from the Court of Appeal caused a lot of reactions across board. And it is for this reason I have with me my guest, Professor Nnamdi James Aduba. He's been involved in different aspects of democratic project for about 4 decades now?
Yeah,
for about 4 decades. And also, he is a global space analyst, he's an election observer, and also a constitutional lawyer. So let's dive right into the conversations now. So, Prof, let's begin to look at democracy in action. What is democracy in action? Let us start this way.
Well, you know the most common definition. Say government, the people, for the people, by the people. The greatest problem you have in developing countries is that the expectations, what they want out of democracy, and what democracy is touted to be capable of delivering. Democracy, they think that when you go and vote, your vote should bring food on your table. Your vote should bring health. Your vote should help you with your health. So when the Western world is touting democracy, everybody hopes that when we become democratic, we are going to have contestants. And then with democracy goes, they say, rule of law. But when you now try to practicalize that different components of democracy, you now find out that in a third world country, it is really very, very difficult. Difficult in the sense that what is the perception of governance? I've often told students that, you see, why we are having so much trouble with democracy in the third world country is that when people go into government, they do not go there for the purpose of service. They go there to make money. It's an investment. So, see, the philosophy behind an investment and the philosophy behind service, they are two different philosophies. So they often clash. This is the basic problem with democratization in a third world country.
All right, so this takes me to another point. How should Nigerians react when they see, that means what you're saying in essence is we do not even know when we see democracy in action.
No, you see, what we expect that if we have democracy, that when you vote, your vote should count. That when you elect people, they should be accountable to you. That when people are there, they are your servants, they are not your rulers. Your expectation is that your interest should be the dominant interest. That's the expectation in a democracy. That's the expectation. It's a government for the people, by the people, for the people.
But if a country or a nation hasn't had that, that means even when they see it, they would probably not recognize it.
It's like those of you who are religiously inclined. It's talking about you are getting prepared to go to heaven. It's only when you die you go to heaven. Nobody has gone there and come back. So the same thing with democracy is an ideal. It's an ideal.
So
we aspire.
It is an ideal. What are the fundamentals of democracy?
Okay, the fundamentals is that you must have rule of law. There must be rule of law. It is not rule of persons. There must be independence of the judiciary. The electoral process must be such that guarantees that the institutions are impartial and that the votes count, and that at the end of the day, the will of the people is supreme. These are qualities you have in a democracy. It's law. Everybody is presumed equal before the law. And then we are ruled by law, not by human beings.
All right. So yesterday, the Court of Appeal gave its judgment and affirmed President Tinubu's election. We saw a unanimous decision and conclusion with no dissent from the judges. Are you surprised at the outcome? And did the verdict come easy?
Being a lawyer and being somebody who has studied these things, listen, people were really very, very expectant in they were looking forward to a miracle. And I have always told my younger students that one of the problems I have with this generation is that they are always they are magical. They are looking for magic. Anybody who has followed the election the way I have followed over the years will not expect anything else from the decision they got yesterday. The 12 hours was just wasting people's time. Because when you look at the issues, you see, the law has been designed in such a way as to make it near impossible for anybody to challenge the verdict of the court. How? The time they gave you, the time you are supposed to prepare is limited. The resources you have, they are limited. And then the judicial process, those of us who are lawyers, we call it adversary system of adjudication. In adversary system of adjudication, it implies that the petitioner, when he's coming, must come with his own evidence. And then that the judge himself will only determine issues based on evidence. So, if when we are coming, you didn't come with sufficient evidence, the judge will not add to your evidence. The judge is presumed to be blind. He is presumed not to be partisan. So what do you have now? You now have that this system of adjudication does not have room for incompetence. Now you see judges saying that we are not Father Christmas, we only give you what you have asked for. And then we are going to act according to the evidence. Now, when you now see an institution that is supposed to be impartial, now that institution is structured in a way as to be favorably disposed to the government in power. You see, this is the institution. INEC itself is supposed to be impartial. But we all know that INEC is not impartial. We all know.
Why would you say that, Prof?
Yeah, I'm giving you
INEC
facts now. I'm giving you, I'm an election observer. You see, election is a process. It's not an event, it's a process. So, if the institution that is supposed to guarantee the impartiality is not impartial, you have a problem. For instance, in the INEC itself, less than 3 months to the election, the director of the ICT, who has been there all along, who is a PhD holder, was removed. Another person was brought to change. Commissioners were changed. Card-carrying members of APC were brought in as commissioners of the INEC. So the institution itself that is supposed to guarantee impartiality was not impartial. That's to start with. And then we, at the NGO level, people complained bitterly. You remember when they wanted to put more in there? You remember how the NGOs fought? They lost. One case was not pushed further simply because they already had somebody from Delta. Otherwise, this was Buhari's social in charge of the social media. They wanted to put her as one of the commissioners. Okay, that is one. So this body that it is not impartial. Now, what happens? logistics. We in Yaga Africa found out that in some areas, materials did not get there on time. Some areas, materials did not even get there at all. In some areas too, the electoral officials were not straightforward. So you can't see. So when you now are looking forward to Atiku and Obi now, you are now asking them to bring forward evidence. What evidence are they going to bring if the person who INEC itself is partisan? And remember, as I told you now, that the system of adjudication we have is what you call adversary system of adjudication. That adversary system presupposes that the judge is impartial. So he doesn't care. So the problem Obi and Atiku had is, how do you gather sufficient evidence to disprove? Because what you are going to prove is there was substantial non-compliance. The law did not say you must comply fully. What he said is substantial non-compliance. You can only invalidate election when there has been substantial non-compliance. So if the non-compliance was minor, if it was a tiny error here and there, you cannot void that election. So when you now see now, when Obi and Atiku were now complaining that there was overvoting and that there was improper action by some election officers, what happened? It has to be proven. It has to be proven. Do they have the resources to prove it? I'll give you one example.
So what resources are needed to prove it?
The resources that you have to go and bring, they read direct evidence. You need direct evidence. You need people who.
So if the source of the direct evidence is already
the
compromised,
source of the direct evidence is already biased. So how do you get this direct evidence you need to prove that there was overvoting? Like you see, the judge was asking.
So Obi said to this question that a lot of people make comments in public spaces. They seem unaware of the workings of the court, and this is just what you are highlighting.
Yes, I'm not telling you that. You see, when the court is working, he who alleges must prove.
So this is what
you cannot say, listen, I won the election. How did you win? You have to prove that the number of your votes were more than the number of the other person's votes. How do you prove it now? When INEC that is supposed to release this results to you is not willing to give you all the results. And then you see, another problem they had was that the introduction of technology was to limit the human involvement. So that once you vote, instantly, it is uploaded. Instantly. In which case, when you needed to prove that there was overvoting, you were not going to find difficulty. But now...
So with that in mind,
yes,
we can see that the opposition is not excited about the judgment of affirming Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president. So if you were the lawyer of the petitioners, what would you advise the PDP and the Labour Party to do?
You see, it's a very uncomfortable position because I am not a practicing lawyer. But I know that most of the practicing lawyers, they don't actually rely on what we academics tell them. See, they are in there to make money. The longer the case lasts, the more money they make. They mystify the person who their client. They know within this number of days, they cannot get enough evidence.
So what would your advice be? So
the advice is that, you see, since they have, it is trial and error to be quite honest with you. If I want to be really honest with you, I will tell them, don't even bother going anywhere. Because the odds are stacked against you.
So if this case moves to the Supreme Court, what would be different and what should Nigerians expect?
There is not going to be any difference because, you see, the grounds on which it was struck out, okay, you see, for we lawyers, we look, what are the grounds? For instance, you go and say that he wasn't qualified. then you are not able to prove that he wasn't qualified to do the election, qualified for the election. That one is thrown out. You now said you had more votes. You couldn't prove that you had more votes than him. So that one is struck out. 2, you said Abuja, you must win Abuja before you win it. And it shown no, Abuja is not special. Abuja is like other states. If you get other states, you can do away without getting Abuja. So what are you left with now? What are the, because it's your grounds of appeal. And then you see the advantage at the lower level is that did you prove overvoting? Did you prove substantial non-compliance? Because when we are going to the Supreme Court now, it is no longer proving now. Is now what did the court of the court of first instance, where did they go wrong? Were they wrong in saying that you needed Abuja was compulsory? Were they wrong? If they were not wrong, now the other one is this. Obi, you have more is that did you prove overvoting? Did you prove substantial non-compliance? Because when we are going to the Supreme Court now, it is no longer proving now. Is now what did the court of the court of first instance, where did they go wrong? Were they wrong in saying that you needed Abuja was compulsory? Were they wrong? If they were not wrong, now the other one is this. Obi, you have more votes. Were they able to show that they had more votes? Okay, they said there was substantial non-compliance. Did they prove that there was substantial non-compliance? So this is evidence-based now. It's evidence-based.
All right, so there's still many reactions presently to the judiciary in Nigeria.
Yes.
We saw the hashtag that was trending just before the pronouncement of the judgment, all eyes on the judiciary. Many feel as though the judiciary has been scandalized, has been maligned through the years. So with this judgment, can many more Nigerians begin to celebrate the judiciary as the last hope of the common man? And is this a chance for them to perhaps redeem their plummeting image?
There is, you see, for those of us who are lawyers and those of us who have been in this business. In fact, before you go, I will give you my book. I wrote on it. Listen, the judiciary are Nigerians themselves. The problem you've had with the judiciary is that there have been a lot of government interference. So when you look at the judiciary, those who are appointed them, like most of the institutions in Nigeria, it could be improved upon. But anybody that tells you that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man, must be joking. No. The system of adjudication we have employed in this country is very expensive. That's why you see them picking senior advocates and the rest of it. It is very, very expensive. The method of government, this presidential system we have embarked on, is very, very expensive. And let me tell you, in developed world, elections matters don't go to courts. Courts are the last place you will take election disputes to. Because you say, why people are angry?
So what other options do you have before the courts?
You see, that is the difference between the third world and the developed world. You see, the confidence, the legitimacy people get is from the people. That's why we are having coups. You have coup in third world countries because the government does not reflect the interest of the people. The government is just a group of people who have managed with their wealth to seize the common patrimony. So for instance, what is causing trouble in this election is that the majority of the voting populace who are the young people, they knew who they voted for. And they knew.
And they have the numbers.
And they have the numbers. So if it was this place that voted for Tinubu, because they know they didn't vote for him. But the structure, you see, this is what leads to anarchy. Yes, that's what leads to anarchy. Like you see, when we had this NSAS, when the legitimate means for people to ventilate their grievances, when it is closed up, they will now go outside. So this is why you see, okay, why did they deploy policemen and everybody security. Why? There was no need. If they were sure that the judges were going to give a judgment that will reflect the will of the people, so why are you protecting the judges? They didn't know the system we are operating is actually detrimental to the interest of the people. And this is why there seems to be a war between the oppressor and the oppressed. So this time around, it's the young people. The young people are angry. And then you see, what wasn't the case of the young people was that technology had been brought in. And they are savvy in technology. And they know. And they know that this technology had not been deployed in the best way. That's why they are angry. Because it's as if they were shortchanged. They were not particularly hopeful about the election, because if you look at the history of the election, you find that the turnout had been diminishing until this technological issue came. Then the Western democracies, EU, brought in a lot of money to get the young people to be involved. See, that is what boosts us. They had always thought that their votes never counted. So it is just this disappointment that this time around we came out and our votes did not count. That is the anger. But if you ask me what's my advice is simply that, hey, listen, it takes time. These old men, you can't just push them out from one attempt. No. It is several attempts before you push them out. You can't just one attempt, then you think it's all over. No. You must buckle up, learn from your mistakes, because the mistakes now is that next time we are going to make sure our votes count. But when we were checking the percentages of these people who stay at the polling booths, what do they call them? These remind me, these young people, party agents.
Yes, party agents.
When we looked at the party agents, we do the percentages. We found out that APC's party agents who were there when the result was called, about 99%. Then you look at the PDP, 99%. When you look the obedience, it's about 60-something%. So if you are not in all the polling booths, how are you going to be sure? And that was the question one of the judges now asked. You cannot say you won the election. You must show us how did you win. Where? If your votes were stolen, where were they stolen? Now, how many days did you give him now? He had 21 days to go throughout Nigeria to look for where the votes were tampered with. And the person who had the records of what transpired is INEC. And it's INEC's action you are challenging. So how will INEC release information for you to enable you to discredit it?
So how satisfying, Prof? Let's drop that. Let's leave that there. How satisfying is the court's interpretation of Section 32 that the FCT does not have any special status? Because that was a major issue when it came to this tribunal.
You know, by the time we finish, I'll give you my book. I've written on the interpretation of the Constitution. There is nothing magical about it. Simply nothing magical. But lawyers are trying to mystify things. See, when we interpret, we say, the first rule of interpretation is the literal approach. Interpret the Constitution simply, without any ambiguity. Go straight. If it says "and," what is "and"? Go straight. That is it. But another rule of interpretation now is the liberal approach. If you follow the literal one, it will lead you to confusion. It will lead you to anarchy. For instance now, if you now go and say that Abuja is special, why will Abuja be special now? Why will all the states of the federation, why will Abuja be special? That you must get to particular percentage of that Abuja. Why is it special? What are you looking for? In a democracy, it's all about number. It's about number. So if the person did not get Abuja, but he goes some other place, so why will you now give an interpretation that is going to cause trouble? Now, if you give this interpretation, it now means that Obi that had, according to the calculation, he was number 3. He was only the person now who could make the Abuja. So somebody with 6 point something million now wins an election. Somebody who has 7 point doesn't win. What does it mean now?
So do you see the judgment of that section now? Do you see it laying this controversy to rest?
Lawyers want to cause trouble. I am a lawyer myself. I can tell you that is the proper interpretation. There is no way you can magnify Abuja, that if you don't get Abuja and you got other states, you have lost it. No. I don't think it's that.
So we're hitting the home run now. So concerning the image of President Bola Tinubu, is this a clean bill from the Court of Appeal? Because all previous accusations, tags, unsavory stories, and stigma allegations of criminal charges in the US, what is the implication of this judgment going forward?
Listen, he still has a package. What they say that it wasn't proven. That's not what they said. You are a thief, but we didn't have enough evidence to convict you, and it was in the court. And the level of evidence you needed in the court was high. It wasn't like they didn't provide anything. They did. There was forfeiture. You couldn't have forfeited that amount of money if you did nothing. The only thing is that he has that package. And what he can only do is to tell people now, this was in the past. I have reformed. I am not that criminal you people thought I was. Even if I was, you couldn't prove it. So can we allow bygones to be bygones? That is it.
All right. So we move on now. So do you think that this pronouncement now from the Court of Appeal, has it deepened our jurisprudence?
Well, I don't know whether you say deepened our jurisprudence, because I think that the structure of the system we use for adjudication, for election petition cases, is weighted against the petitioner. It's simply not fair. The burden is enormous. There was no way they would have made it. And if you cannot make it, if it's not going to be possible for you to upturn a decision that everybody knew was unfair, I don't think it's deepening into democracy. No, it is not.
So how do you gauge the different reactions to this judgment? The petitioners of PDP and the Labour Party brought voluminous documents, but many were thrown out. So evidence, which is the currency of the court, seemed lacking. So should petitioners be curtailed because some fines were also dished out? What can lawyers learn from this?
What they learn, like I think somebody was saying it recently. Look at America. It's just that we don't respect ourselves. In America, 3/4, almost 80% of all Trump's lawyers were all fined. There are cases that are frivolous, very frivolous. It's abuse of court process. There was a particular case that a very, very senior advocate had to be fined. A Supreme Court had already given its decision. And the Supreme Court had already given its decision, and then you now go and advise your client to appeal. What does that mean? In law, there's what we call that there must be end to litigation. So these litigations must end at a particular point in time. So if the senior lawyers have, because of the greed, they go to violate this principle. In law we have principles. We have principles of judicial precedent. If a Supreme Court had already ruled on an issue, you don't go again fishing. Okay, and that builds up what we call one of the sources of the law, which is judicial precedence. You don't go to disturb it. So what I am really appealing to most of the lawyers is that, listen, they should be diligent. They know that all those bags they were carrying there, They knew they were going to be thrown out. They knew.
So let's talk about the impact of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended on this ruling. Has the Electoral Act made any improvements? Lawyers went to court backed by the Electoral Act.
You see, like I told you before, any electoral system that is going to anchor itself on court system is flawed, completely flawed. The results of election should be determined in the field. It should be in the field, not in the courts. Because the rules of the court are so strict that sometimes somebody who won an election may actually be declared not to have won because of sheer technicalities of the court process. So in developed climes, people never, and I use that word advisedly, people never hope to resort to court to settle the dispute because it doesn't settle the matter.
All right, so what do you say to those disappointed with this judgment? Like the Labour Party has rejected the judgment entirely. The PDP, as of yesterday, is yet to issue a statement of its next action.
What I will tell them is this: if they have good lawyers there, for the fun of it, because in Nigeria, for the fun of it, okay, let them go and test some of the, for the fun of it, let them go and test at the Supreme Court. Possibly this issue of Abuja, to go and test whether Abuja is special, that if you don't win Abuja, you have not won election. That is it. Two, again, on this question of conviction forfeiture relating to Bola Tinubu, somebody who has forfeited such amount in relation to drug, doesn't it impinge on the character of the person? Because I saying the evidence was not sufficient. Was it really not sufficient? Was it not sufficient? Because you see, the impression you give, and that's the problem with the law, is personalized opinion. You think this is not. But what was the intention of the law? The intention of the law is that somebody who is going to be our president should not have moral baggage. And having involvement in anything relating to drugs. So,
well, some would argue that the Nigerian political class are some of the most litigious sets of human beings too.
Yes. See, that's what I'm telling you now, that listen now, for the fun of it, they can go to the Supreme Court. But I'm not telling you, you know when this thing, even just 48 hours ago, I was debating with somebody. I said, I cannot debate with you. I said, Obi's case will be thrown out. I told him, these cases are going to be thrown out. Because I have weighed it. And I know it's a big mountain they have to climb. You see, the way the structure of the system is, even if I may digress a little bit, I don't think it's legal, but come to think of it. Why did Tinubu say it was his turn? Why did he say it was his turn? You see, if people were watchful, election is just an event, but the election is a process. We started getting it wrong right from the primaries. It was already sold out in the primaries. People saw buying and selling. The options of the public were restricted after the primaries. And they saw him vote over everybody with dollars. So what are you going to be left with to vote for? You saw even the incumbent vice president then. He couldn't even match him with money. So what were you expecting? Is it a miracle? And then you saw Atiku. Atiku bent the constitution of the PDP. It wasn't the turn of the north. It was the turn of the south. So these are where the harm had been done. Talking about going to court, this is the last. What do you expect the court to do? The harm had already been done. You didn't win. The structure of your campaign, the structure of INEC and all the rest of them, we were not diligent enough. So maybe for the future now, the structure of INEC, that is why people say, unbundle INEC. Unbundle INEC. INEC has so much powers, it has to be unbundled. Okay, introduce more of technology so that you will avoid little.
Let's have your final thoughts.
Yes.
Yes, have your final thoughts as a constitutional lawyer for the past 4 decades and being, of course, an election observer. How would you view the last elections of February 23, 2023?
I would say it was a mixed bag. There were positives and there were negatives. Positives in the sense that there was use of technology. I think we need more use of technology. Secondly, youth involvement. We need more of youth involvement. And this time around, they are supposed to be vigilant. In fact, I'm so impressed with the turnout of the youths because for once, they now did not sell, most of them did not sell themselves. A lot of people who belong to the obedient movement were not collecting money from anybody. They were doing it because they believed actually in the project. And that is the way forward. Youths must believe that they can make a difference. They shouldn't go and sleep because this effort did not yield the result they wanted. But I can tell you, they have tried. For them to have destabilized Tinubu in Lagos, destabilized Adamu in Nasarawa, destabilized Buhari in Katsina, it was a huge... In fact, it was mainly sometimes is the presidential election that they got wrong. In the other gubernatorial elections, like Plateau here, they got things right. In some places too, I hear that this woman in Kogi, Akpoti, that she just won as being a senator, despite, because we knew what happened. So it's not all bad news. There were some good parts, some bad parts.
So do we need to revisit the Electoral Act?
It has to, definitely. You see, the judges, and that's the problem we have with the judges now. You know, all the guidelines, they are now saying that they are guidelines. And since they are guidelines, if you didn't follow them, it didn't mean you don't have consequences. You see, that's where the trouble is. Because the duty on INEC that you must do this, the judges don't throw it out and say no.
So how soon should the Electoral Act be revisited?
No. As soon as these legislators, because it is Obi today, it is Atiku today. Tomorrow it could be Tinubu himself. Okay? Let the APC not be jumping up and down that they have won. No, this thing can actually be used against them in the next election. Is just around. It's just 4 years. It's just 4 years. They too may be at the losing part, and they may want they might want to use the courts. So these laws must be amended.
Thank you so much.
The burden on the people who want to challenge the results is enormous. It has to be lightened.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your insight. With me in the backyard, and thank you for liking, for subscribing, for sharing, and also for turning on that notification button. That is how you help my channel to grow.